Welcome back, everyone. So we will pick up exactly where we left off with the first video on this second one, and we will engage into a different part of the same argument. When I originally recorded this, it was all one long video. So, like I said, this has literally is an hour-long video that's been broken up into 3 segments. So we will just go ahead and play the end of the last video and go directly in to the second one. But I don't know that those factions are necessarily compatible with each other. There is a big difference between celebrating and embracing, really embracing freedoms, rights, and liberties versus wanting to establish totalitarianism and dictatorship. If you want your freedoms, you're going to have to fight. You're going to have to fight. If the National Socialists did take over and they won and they got their way, then by all means, the Ethno-Nationalists who want to keep the tenets of freedoms, the tenets of democracy or a constitutional republic would have to fight them. They would have to pick up arms and they would have to fight them. If you wanted to preserve rights, liberties, and freedoms. And just let it be known, there is no such thing as a perfect world. That doesn't exist. Utopias are a pipe dream. They do not exist. There's no such thing as a perfect world. Now, if we're going to live in an imperfect world, I think the best way to do that would not be to live under oppression or suppression of the state, of the government. If we're going to live in an unperfect world, I think the best way to conduct a society is to grant maximum amount of freedoms and limit freedoms based on causality of consequence. Meaning that if your action has a negative consequence, then we can talk about restricting freedoms and liberties because the action has a deeply negative ramification. So then I go back into the comparison of taking away rights, liberties, and freedoms versus being called a derogatory word. Well, being called a derogatory word isn't suppressing my rights, liberties, and freedoms. And I absolutely support your right to dislike any particular group that you so choose. But a pejorative term does not take away rights, liberties, and freedoms, and it merely is an embodiment of rights, liberties, and freedoms that you have the capability of expressing your dislike towards a particular group. But it does not infringe upon others' rights, liberties, and freedoms. So as I said, I would have to stand on the side that would respect an individual's rights, liberties, and freedoms versus and to think that you would be protected because you are not one of these minorities, well, I think you'd be wrong. Totalitarianism is total domination, total suppression of anything that they see as a degradation of the moral fabric of society, which is highly subjective, by the way. Highly subjective. So going into the homosexuality bit, because I have to cover this, there has been a lot of push against homosexual rights, which I'm sure you are glad to hear. The DA, I believe, of Tennessee, it was either Tennessee or Arkansas, came out and said that homosexuals do not deserve to be protected by the laws of domestic violence to protect the sanctity of marriage. So at that point, we have dehumanized homosexuals. That DA, that district attorney, has dehumanized them. They are not human enough to be protected from violence. And we're not talking about a hate crime here. We're not talking about something that would be classified as a hate crime. We're talking about actual criminal activity of spousal abuse or abuse in general. Somebody being beaten up. So, if we're in support of that, then I guess humanitarianism is out the window. Then this is okay. Is that how we're going to define our society? Is that it is okay to beat people up, to beat them to a bloody pulp, even maybe to beat them to death against their will? And we're going to define that as being okay based on the premise that we disagree with their lifestyle or who they are as an individual. Is that how we want to define our society? Is that what we call ethical? Well, I would certainly hope not. I would certainly hope that isn't what we define as ethical. Because as I said, that is highly subjective. And that would mean that what Antifa is doing to anyone that they presume to be as alt-right or Nazis, they are in the right. They are, too, participating in dehumanization. I do not want to dehumanize someone just because they have an idea that I disagree with, fundamentally, such as the alt-right. The alt-right has ideas and a philosophy that fundamentally, to my core level, I disagree with. But I can interact with you on a civilized basis because you are still human. And that's how I perceive it. I don't agree with your idea, but I still respect you as a human. And I still respect you as a human of having rights, liberties, and freedoms, as it should be. I respect your right to talk against homosexuality if you so choose. That is your right to do. But I do want to cover the basis on why. I keep asking the question, and to which it never gets a response, to Chick Micken. And that is, what is it that I need to take responsibility for as a homosexual myself? What do I need to take responsibility for? What are the supposed negative ramifications of homosexuality? He said that, Chick Micken, you called it unhealthy. But I fail to see how homosexuality is unhealthy. There is no victim in homosexuality. It is between two informed, consenting adults. there is no specific disease, even though people like to proclaim it. There is no specific disease related to homosexuality. Many people make the case of HIV. Well, straight people have that too, so that's not the argument. You'd like it to be the argument, but that's not the case. So what is it? Is it the sex act itself? Because I have to say that this is something that is very interesting to me, is that people who try to demonize homosexuality seem to predominantly focus on the sexual act, specifically between two males. And of course, I am referring to anal sex. I think many people find that disgusting. And I understand, I get that, but not every homosexual male finds anal sex of any kind, whether they be top or bottom. There are homosexual males out there who want nothing to do with anal sex whatsoever. But the thing that strikes me is that very seldom does anyone pay attention to the romantic aspect of homosexuality. That the sex act is a physical display of affection. Very seldomly do anyone who speaks out against homosexuality, do they pay attention to that aspect. That sex is not just a means of reproduction, but it's also an act that married couples, people who have coupled, people who are pair bonded, people who are in a monogamous relationship use as a tool or as a means of expressing romantic love for the person they are in love with. So it's not just for reproductive purposes, it's also a form of expression to say, I love and I care about you. There's other aspects of the romantic side of homosexuality that nobody really, it seems seldomly is paid attention to. The first kiss, holding hands, spending time together. There was a philosopher that talked about this, that said that we shouldn't use science nor religion to make moral arguments towards homosexuality, and I think he couldn't be more right. At first, I thought he was ridiculous until I heard him out. And then I thought, I think he's absolutely correct. Because when you have it stuck in your mind, the sex act, and you don't think about the fact that, just like heterosexuals, in the first date, you've got butterflies in your stomach, sweaty palms, you think about the first kiss, and when you finally get that first kiss, it's like fireworks, as it's been explained is described by many, many poets over centuries as being this phenomenal experience, the first kiss you have with the person that you are in love with. And as many heterosexuals know, marriage, a relationship, is not about sex. Sex is not what defines a relationship. It has to do with pair bonding. It has to do with cohabitation. It could be to rear children, that could be one of the reasons, but I find that many people pair bond not just to rear children, but they pair bond for cohabitation. They do it for the sake of love. It is not about sex, and in fact, it's quite common that the longer a couple have been together, the less sex they have. That is a sacrifice that you make. And believe it or not, homosexuals make that same sacrifice. So, what is it about homosexuality that is deteriorating this so-called moral fabric of society. We've already established that sexuality, whether it be hetero, bisexual, or homo, is involuntary. So this already confirms that this is not a learned behavior. This is something you are born with. You either have it or you don't. You are either bisexual, heterosexual, or homosexual. It's involuntary. There's no way around it. Homosexuals make up 10% of the population, period, end of story. That number doesn't change much. It might go up 1% or down 1%, but it doesn't change much. Which is indicative that, yes, indeed, sexual orientation, sexuality is involuntary. So, that being said, what exactly is it that about homosexuality that is deteriorating the moral fabric of society? What is it? What is it exactly that is unhealthy? Because so far to say, I have not seen any documentation through medical science, through psychology, through neurology, or any such of the kind to suggest that homosexuality is, well, that it impairs a person or inhibits a person from their life and the things that they have to do. And in fact, that is one thing that has to be met to classify something as a mental disorder, is that it has to impair you in some way. Many people call themselves obsessive-compulsive because many people exhibit obsessive-compulsive behavior, but the thing that differentiates an obsessive-compulsive behavior versus obsessive-compulsive disorder is whether or not it inhibits you from living your life, from interacting or living your life in a healthy way, if it inhibits you in some way. And homosexuality just doesn't do any of that. It just doesn't. There's no evidence to support that. That's why it got taken off of that list. That's why it's no longer considered to be a disorder, is because there is no negative ramification that can be found. So again, the question is, what exactly about homosexuality is degrading to the moral fabric of society? And they say, well, there's an agenda. They're teaching it to our kids. What exactly is being taught to kids? Are they being taught gay sex? If they're being taught gay sex, then I will stand alongside with you and say, yes, that is absolutely inappropriate. We do not need to be teaching children about gay sex. Or is it that we are teaching them that homosexuality is a natural part of life? They exist. Is it teaching tolerance and acceptance? Well, if that's the case, then I can't stand on yours. I can't stand side by side in protest. Because teaching kids that homosexuality, that homosexuals exist, that they're a part of the world that we live in, that saying, like, sometimes this happens. Well, you know, that there's a big difference between tolerance and acceptance, and I'm okay with both. Tolerance means that you tolerate. You say, it's there, I don't like it, but it's there and there's nothing I can do about it. Acceptance is saying, they're fine, I have no problem with it. So teaching tolerance and acceptance, you think about those two words, tolerance and acceptance, choose one. If you're going to tolerate, fine. It doesn't mean you have to accept it. If you're going to accept it, well, from my perspective, from my stance, it's even better. But you don't have to. You don't have to. So what exactly, again, this doesn't answer the question. What is it about homosexuality that is deteriorating the moral fabric of society? Never mind that even many attributes of people on the right, they desire and they want this idea of the nuclear family. Well, you're pushing people off of your side by going against homosexuals, because there are many homosexuals that have that dream as well. They want the nuclear family lifestyle. Maybe they want a stay-at-home husband. Maybe they want a stay-at-home wife. Or maybe they'll do like many people of the modern age, because things have gotten so expensive, they live in a dual income household in order to raise a child. And the thing about homosexuals is that there is no accidental pregnancy. There is no oops, we had a kid, we have to be responsible now. It is absolutely 100% a decision that they make on their part. They are financially ready. They are ready 100% to engage into parenthood, whatever that may be. So in many cases, I'd say when homosexuals raise a child, it's probably in a better condition, in a better environment, because there's no chance of accidental. And this could be done through adoption, or it could be done through surrogacy. And there's already been studies that show that children who are raised by same-sex couples do not grow up to be homosexuals themselves, and indeed are still taught responsibility, moral behaviors, and how to conduct themselves appropriately in society. And because a lot of the times with particularly two males, who usually tend to take higher paying jobs, have a better chance in academia because of it. So again, that does not answer the question, what is degrading to the moral fabric of society when it comes to granting homosexuals rights, liberties, and freedoms? So I will agree with you that indoctrinating children is a bad thing. When I look at Lindsay's queer kids stuff, I think, what an atrocious nightmare. Now, I don't think Lindsay queer kids stuff should be deplatformed, but I think it's the parents' responsibility to engage with their children to see what kind of media they are consuming. Now, I don't understand the point of sheltering your children from certain worldviews, because they're going to be in for a big surprise when they get out into the real world and find things that they have never been told about or taught about. And this goes into my concern, is that this major push. Well, that concludes this video, and I hope that you all have been enjoying this journey down the philosophical arguments of the alt-right, as well as my own position. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment, and hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. And the third video will be coming, but this completes the second one.